when we're pricing our services, a lot of the time we go, okay, this is my hourly rate. And that's where the conversation stops. Like we go, that's it. We're done. Like I have done 10 hours and therefore you give me 10 hours worth of dollary dues. That's it. That's done. But a lot of the time we're not considering that there's other parts or other ingredients that we need to consider.
The Side Hustler's Perspective podcast is fuel for your mind and creative grind. Each week, we break down the art of healthy hustling, getting out of your own way, and growing your creative business. Let's get it. Ladies and gentlemen, whoever's listening out there, I'm joined by former rockstar, coaching student, overall badass human being, Jasmine Holmes. Welcome, Jasmine. It's great to catch back up with you. How you been?
Really good, really good. Things are ticking along really nicely. And I have to say thank you so much for having me on. This is a pretty particular milestone. Like you come up with the menu of things that you want to achieve. And this is the dessert. This is the like gooey chocolate cake. And I'm really excited to dig in.
Well, it's pretty wild to see like where we were at the beginning of the year and, you know, talking about your pie and loving for baking. And now it's like you're truly owning it. It's a powerful thing for people when I think of Jasmine, I think of pie. But when you start owning that mental real estate, when I see something pie related, I think of Jasmine. That's way more powerful. And that's something I'm working with my students. I'm hoping people think about that when they think of pizza. Maybe they think of me or the term side hustle keywords. I'm taking up that brain space. So you are living your brand. And I love pumpkin pie and apple pie, but I don't have a green hoodie or an orange hoodie. So we're going with that blueberry yum look today. So I'm just like in blueberry pie mode. Nice. So people can expect probably lots of puns, lots of ridiculousness, but you're like me. I think it's powerful to teach people our philosophies and our concepts through the use of metaphors and analogies, especially fun ones. So I think that's what works for you. That's what's always worked for me. So let's dive in. Ooh, we got big girl Juicy Lucy on the podcast today too. So let's get it. It's going to be a good one. All right. So for those who don't know, can you bless us with a little bit of a Wikipedia page summary about yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Jasmine Designs. I am the design superwoman and pricing queen. When it comes to Jazz, she has kind of two sides. We always have a split personality, but I have multiple and we take staff meetings every Tuesday in my brain. It's perfect. But the two sides of me are the design superwoman is created for clients where I fly in, fix problems and fly away until they need me again, like their super secret weapon in their back pocket. And the pricing queen has been born, baked, and served up on a silver platter this year. The pricing queen takes those 14 years of knowledge that I have as a design superwoman and teaches other creatives, designers, freelancers how to bake more profit into their creative crust and earn dough for what they do well. So it's really important to me to pass on the knowledge, information, and recipes to creative success to other creatives who are maybe where I was 4 or 5 years ago, not having a damn clue about pricing, about how to price myself, but also the importance of every single part of my brand and how that played into how I price myself for my ideal clients. So that is me. Da, 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 da.
And you reign from Melbourne, Australia, right?
Sure do. Original Adelaidean girl, or Adelaide, as I like to say, which is about 8 to 10 hours west of here. For all of my US listeners, that is the closest state. So if you were to overlay Australia on America, we're pretty similar in size. So if I was to drive 10 hours to drive home, that would be one state to the other. Whereas for you guys, it ends up being a lot more.
It's fun how we make this work. I'm like, okay, you have to get up way earlier for this and I have to record way later. So we're both making sacrifices to make this work. So my kiddos can wait at daycare. Dada's coming here in a little bit. So I hope you're hungry. Let's dive into this. So first off, why pricing specifically as kind of like your flag that you plant? How have you realized like so many people struggle with this? Is just because so many people came to you and were like, it came to you as like the go-to person to ask questions on pricing? Like, how did this come to play?
So it was kind of those moments where it's like, oh, it feels serendipitous of like that happened and that happened and that happened, and you look at them backwards, kind of like an Arrested Development episode, and you're like, oh, I get how that all works together now. I understand it. Right, cool. So a few things happened. One, I was on Dominique Fallar's Typism podcast, and
Shout
we
out to
were sent
Dominique.
all. Hello, my Typism queen. She's amazing. So when she first put out a list of topics for people to deep dive into and choose, pricing was one of the ones I chose, and no one else did. So I was like, okay, so this is an uncomfortable subject for some people. Let's fall forward. Let's really immerse ourselves into something that, one, is really difficult for a lot of creatives because I myself am a 32-year-old elder millennial people pleaser Virgo eldest daughter. So I am 100% the kind of person who will overthink and undercharge if I'm not given the right tools to be able to stop myself from doing that. And so when I first started talking about pricing, people responded really positively, to the point where my DMs ended up getting filled with not only new starters, but seasoned people in the industry going, hey, can you help me work through this pricing situation that I'm not quite sure what to put a dollar amount on? And it was really affirming and really made it clear that not only is pricing something that everyone struggles with, but it's something that legitimately changes lives. It has the ability to increase how much you're making. And I'm not saying we're going to be all like Scrooge McDuck throwing coins in the air and being like, oh my God, I'm making so much money. It's making it so that you don't have to second guess a pizza on a Friday night. So you don't have to like work out and be scared about spending a little bit on yourself or reinvesting in your business so that you can be growing and actually seeing growth, not only in your personal, but in your monetary side of things.
I like that. So people can expect today is learn how to price their worth, learn how to not leave money on the table, and learn how to have, I guess, peace of mind. Because they're not so stressed out.
The double piece. Oh no, like peace of mind and peace of pie mind. I like it.
Piece of pie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you could, I would like to go back in time, because so many people in freelancing or looking to freelance in this audience, their pricing knowledge is either non-existent or they're looking to like advance it, be more of a professional. They've got the basics down. I've priced, I've done some freelance for a year or two, but I'm really ready to like dig this in and bump up the professional game. Can you speak a little bit towards your early struggles though, just so we humanize the situation and people are like, oh, thank God, I'm not the only one who sucks butt with this, but can you just kind of highlight some of your major screw ups in the day that then radically helped you prepare to where you're at now as a seasoned pricing pro? And then we're going to start getting to like the stages and milestones of pricing.
Awesome. So I have most definitely underpriced, undercharged many a time in the past. But there's also been moments of growth or looking back and going, that makes sense now. So perfect example happened a couple of weeks ago. I had an old client come back to me after 7 years. Now, I'm going to be really open and honest here with my pricing. In this last year, I've teetered between $150 and $200 per hour for my services for my clients. It's Australian dollars. And I also charge GST, so a goods and services taxes here. Back when I was working for them 7 years ago, I was charging them $35 an hour. So when they came to me like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I had to have some really hard conversations with them saying, look, I understand.
So retain your client?
Yeah, pretty much. It was putting together a global magazine. And it was a lot of like just not so much churn and burn work, but it was processes. And so it is time consuming. So I had to be really honest with them and say, look, back then my rate was $35 an hour. I understand now that now being at $200 an hour, that's possibly going to price me out of the situation that is your ideal situation, but we can negotiate, meet in the middle, find a situation that's going to work for us. Ultimately, that didn't work out. Ultimately, they're not going with me, and that's totally fine. But I don't have to diminish my worth to be able to get that job. And that's something that's really important as well, as having confidence in knowing that what you're serving up is worth the dollar amount that you're putting on that piece of pie.
Being confident in the value you provide. So many people are missing that. I think that's the main thing. People don't understand the value they provide and they don't know how to communicate it. And so they're stuck in a bottom feeding game of trying to compete to the lowest price to get a client out of desperation.
And sometimes realistically, a client isn't looking for the cheapest option. Like, just because you lower your prices doesn't guarantee you the actual job at all.
Yeah. Like, I'm personally to the phase where I know quality is going to cost me something. And so the cheapest price, I'm like, actually, I don't know if I can take your work seriously.
It puts in a flavor of doubt. Like, it makes you sit there and go, well, are they missing something that I know is relevant? And therefore, am I going to be getting like paying through the nose by the time this is finished, because all of the things that they haven't considered or they haven't taken into account that a professional who is charging higher does. Am I going to have bill shock, which is the worst, absolute worst?
So is the goods and services fee similar to like an art creation fee? If you're like an illustrator getting hired for, let's say, I think of Maggie Interior's Little Patterns. She has her illustration creation fee, and then she has like her licensing fee that she would tack on. Is that like the goods and services still like the creation fee to leverage my creative abilities? You get this, and then you have the scope of the work as well?
For the most part, yes. I don't do licensing as much as the greats like Maggie Interiors and Ilana and Ilana and Katie. Just absolute shout out to those girls. They're awesome, all three of them. I've had more chats than I can count when it comes to talking with Maggie and talking with those girls about licensing, because that's something that I want to be learning more about, because I feel like it's really relevant. When it comes to pricing my services,
I think it's even more powerful. Sorry to interrupt. I think it's going to be even more powerful though, because I've had the licensing world, but I think you come in with a different angle, which I think is going to probably relate to more people.
Well, that's the thing, is that when we're pricing our services, a lot of the time we go, okay, this is my hourly rate, and that's where the conversation stops. Like, we go, that's it, we're done. Like, I have done 10 hours and therefore you give me 10 hours worth of dollary dues. That's it, that's done. But a lot of the time we're not considering that there's other parts or other ingredients that we need to consider. So do we need to consider the value of the job? And when I talk about value, I'm talking about like, what's the value to the client if the problem went away? So if it takes you 10 hours, but it's worth so much more than 10 hours worth of your hourly rate, then you need to be considering that when you're charging. Likewise, if you're creating something and the end result is worth more, like the customer is paying more than what you charged, they're making their return on investment or ROI faster than it took to make the design solution, then that's something that you need to be considering in your pricing. So that's why I probably price on hourly, maybe 10%, maybe 15 at a stretch. And that's when I don't know the scope. It's when I sit there and I can kind of package it up and say, okay, I think this is going to be about 10 hours worth. Here's a 10-hour pack, and this is what we're going to use. Otherwise, I kind of split it between project pricing, where I can bake in extra items like printing, like extra services that can be white labeled, or I consider value-based pricing, where I can actually look at what the value is at the end and incorporate that into a whole number. And realistically, if you're working on hourly, you're capping yourself at how many hours you can work in the day, and how many you can actually bill for. But you're also probably being rushed by the client because they're sitting there watching the clock and wanting to get their money's worth. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way of working, and that might not suit you. You might be sitting there going, well, like, I don't necessarily want to be working during the day, or you've got a side hustle and you're working at night, and maybe the client doesn't would prefer that you work at the same time. So it's all about setting those expectations and boundaries with your clients. And part of that is setting the right price.
So where you're at currently today, and then we'll go back and talk about the phases. how do you structure this goods and services fee? And then, so you have your goods and services fee, and then is it like a project based pricing or value based pricing? Then you pick one of your pricing criterias that you would follow. Is it kind of like that? Here's this, and then I pair it with one of these models.
Largely, yes. So, but quite often the client will not know the hours amount that I've put on this. And it's really important to kind of let people know that your hourly rate is your personal
private
number.
Hourly rate.
I'm gonna keep it to my chest. I'm quite open with mine because I feel like it's really important for other creatives to actually hear numbers rather than going, oh, I don't know, is $35 too much? Well, not necessarily if it's matches the value that you're serving to your clients. So say, for instance, I'm doing a project where I know that there's going to be printing involved or hosting, or there's other elements that I know are going to be involved. If the client it's not always the client's business, nor are they interested sometimes in actually finding out how your costs are broken down. And also how you do the job. So say, for instance, if I hire someone else to help me, they don't need to know how much I'm paying them. They don't need to know, it's not important to them necessarily. So if you can serve them up a whole number, sometimes it's better for the client because they know, okay, we've budgeted this to them. And that's the other thing, is that you're working with a budget. You're most often, when you're working with clients and corporates, you're working with a budget that has been allotted to hire a genius like you. So a lot of the time we get in this mindset of like, oh, I'm taking the money away from their back pocket. Well, you're not. It's a budget that's been allocated and they need your services. So provide the value and add extra value where you can, especially when you've got a higher budget, because then it's like, awesome, I'm able to do everything. If anyone who's listening, the cat just like death stared, Scotty. It was great.
I got my cats like to bomb the videos of my recordings, but I got 3 cats. We got a cat door that's literally shaped like a cat, so they can get down here anytime they want. So I can't stop them. So then how does the goods and services fee? Because I think a lot of people aren't thinking about this part. So how do you calculate your own personal, and where should someone start in the beginning when they're just getting started? Like someone hits them up for a logo, or some kind of like a brochure, versus like the next level of intermediate and then like the advanced level. So if Jasmine was back to the beginning, what would you tell Jasmine to do to start with on like, what's like a basic, logos were always like the thing I got hit up to do.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I don't do logos.
Yeah, you do. So like, what's like a core thing that you do and like the levels?
So branding in general. Yeah, for sure. I've always just found that logos, I'm very picky when it comes to logos, because I feel like it's become if you are a designer, you are synonymous for making logos. It kind of goes hand in hand. And then the expectation is that anyone can do it. And I feel like it takes a certain level of skill, but sometimes the client doesn't necessarily want to be understanding or educating being educated in that process of what the importance is. So when it comes to actually working out that goods and services rate, what you want to be trying to look at is, okay, well, let's start with the core of what money do you want to be taking home at the end of the year? So starting with an actual salary. And this is a really good opportunity for you to look around in your industry. And this is where it gets really specific on where you are and what you're doing. You're always going to have designers who are in junior roles or senior roles or mid-sized roles. And so you start doing the research to where you are and find out what the salary is for where you are. And if that feels low, up it. If it feels high, stick with it. Because realistically, if you start low, you'll have further to go. If you start high, you'll be able to provide value. And then when it comes to then calculating, you need to start actually considering the things that are expenses or you need to take into account to be able to run your business. Things like software, hardware. If you've got a studio like myself, or if you are working from home, portioning that into what is the expense of running your business. And once you've got that salary plus expenses, you then need to work out how many hours you can feasibly bill for in a week. So say, for instance, you're working 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, you can't necessarily bill for every single hour. And if you're only working 8 hours a day, well done. Because I know I work a lot more. But it's all of those can't necessarily be billed for. So if you can make it so that the ones you bill for cover the ones that you're not necessarily billing for, like putting together your own marketing, putting together your admin and charging, and actually doing all of your invoicing, it's really important to make sure that that time that you're running your business, you're not actually operating at a loss. So when you've put all of the salary and your expenses together, and then you've worked out how many billable hours are available to you in a week, and then times that by 52 or less, because you are going to be giving yourself time off, because as a creative, it doesn't mean that because you're enjoying your job, it doesn't mean that you can't have time off, sick leave, paternity leave, maternity leave, all of the things that you can actually make sure that you are being covered. And so you take those details, the salary plus expenses, divide it by their working hours, and that gives you your personal hourly rate. That gives the dollar value of your time. And this becomes the base of what you take forward. So say, for instance, you're doing a project rate. You would then give them this many hours times my personal rate. You would then create that number, and that's the number you give to the client. You don't give them your calculations. They don't need to know that. That's not
your hourly rate is private.
Yeah. So say, for instance, you've calculated your hourly rate at $150 an hour, and you know it's going to take 10 hours. You would start with $1,500. That's where you would start.
Minimum, without knowing the true value scope.
Yeah. And then you start baking in the extras. So you and a lot of the time, a client isn't necessarily paying for your time and your skills. They might also be paying for your experience, because you know that something like this takes extra time, or you have a trade account, which you then put a markup on. And they're also paying for convenience, like the convenience of not, like there's a lot of times where I'm like, oh, I could do that myself, but I would rather pay someone else to do it for me. A convenience tax or a convenience fee is really relevant, because some people just don't want to do things, and that's totally fine. If you can do it well and charge well for it, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with making money because you're able to do something that someone else can do as well.
So this is solid. So for anybody who's just getting started, this is the shit that I wish someone would have told me. This is what I do with my students now. It's okay, big picture, let's work backwards. Too many people are like, I don't even know what to charge. I'm just going to start with here. But I'm like, no, start with the big picture. How much you want to make? Say it's like 50K when you're just beginning, or more realistically, most people listening are creative side hustlers doing this outside of day job, and they would be stoked to make 20K in a year. So start with 20K. And by the time you continue to scale it and you're ready to do this full time, you already have systems in place. But so many people think they need to do this full time right from the jump to be considered successful because they're clout chasing, when really it's best to master it now, a little bit at a time, leverage what Jasmine's saying right now, and then slowly scale it and master the back end tax related accounting stuff. That's for another day. But yeah. Okay. So that's what you would highly recommend for anybody just getting started.
Any stage at all. And realistically, what's going to define what milestone you're up to or what stage you're up to is largely going to be that first number, that salary base. So if you're wanting to have this as a side hustle, how much do you want to make from your side hustle? How much would you need to make from your side hustle if you are if you're just doing a side hustle to keep it as a side hustle, that's totally fine too. But if you're wanting to turn the side hustle into your full time, what number would you need to make in what amount of time to be able to go, yeah, okay, it's now time to dive in. And if you have that as your like beacon of hope at the end, and then start calculating based on that, then that's going to mean that you're going to have a milestone to work towards.
You have a target.
And I know both of you and I have definite targets that sit like just above our desks and
Keep everything written in front of me. And I have Siri reminding me daily of certain targets too.
Yeah. And I'll tell you right now, creating milestones and creating targets for yourself that are stepping stones along the way are going to be so valuable, not only to work towards, but also to turn around and look back on. Like if you can sit there and go, okay, and you get over the peak and you go, oh, there's still so far to go. But if you can turn around and look at the journey that you've had so far and see when and what instigators were for increasing your rate or changing your costs or altering the way that you priced as opposed to how much you priced, these are really important, really valuable moments and lessons that you can then chuck in your tool belt, grab onto the next rope and start pulling yourself up as well.
And that's perfect. So like, what would be the next step? This is your baseline. Starting to learn the fundamentals of what you can extra bake into the pie of your value-based pricing.
Mm-hmm.
The goods and services fee. I still think people are probably really confused on that aspect. Because is that then baked into the final amount, or is it like a line item? Here's this, and then here's the final amount.
So it's baked into the final amount, but it's really up to you to work out what makes you not necessarily most comfortable, but makes the most sense to you. So if you are sitting there and you're going...
Can you describe what a good and services fee would be to people? Because this is a little bit new too. It's similar to kind of what I believe Maggie's talking about, art creation fee, but I want to hear like a definition of it, like a fifth grader could understand it, and then how you bake it in and how do you leverage it with your own, how do you calculate your own and where could someone start with their own? I think that would be super helpful.
Yeah. So that goods and services fee is very similar to the dollar amount that you're putting on your time, but it is a whole number. It is not a, you can have 17 serves of my hourly rate. It's this project itself, I know is going to take 10 hours. Plus I want to bake in a little bit more time just in case. So I'll probably add about 10 to 20% just to cover myself. And so in that scenario that we were saying earlier, that my rate's $150 an hour, I've got 10 hours worth of work, but I can see that scope may creep. I can see that things may bleed out the edges and go everywhere and get messy. So I might bake in an extra, say, 3 hours. So that means that I'm probably going to be charging around about $1,950. So I would round it to $2,000. I would just round that out so that I feel
that's just your baseline of what you're going to build off of from people just figuring that out. Cool.
Yeah. And so then when you're taking into consideration the extra little bits and pieces of things that I can add in. So you've got your goods and services fee, the actual dollar amount that's put on the time, effort, energy, skills, and creation of what you're doing. And then you bake in extra bits and pieces so that you can serve that up to them a lot easier for them to understand. And then the last kind of part is the value. So if the value that you're serving is actually like way different to what the input is, then you need to readjust. And putting whole numbers on things is fine. You are allowed to go, okay, well, I was going to be charging $2,000 for that, but it looks like it's probably going to make the client $10,000 in the first year. So I probably shouldn't be charging them $2,000. I probably should be closer to $5,000. And very rarely does a client come back and say, can you please justify your rates? Can you please tell me exactly why you charged what you charge? It's less when it's confidence driven. And there was a great post that G'day Frank put out the other week, which was a text message from a client, which is like, can you please break down the costs of this 10K branding package? And he went, yes, it is 10K for me to do it and 0K for me not to. And it was just like, wow, okay, fair enough. Because when you're confident in the value you serve, you're going to be confident in when they come back and say, oh, I don't know, maybe, can you justify, can you change the way that you're serving? The way you serve up to your clients is about you doing the best that you can with what you have and making that or helping that to match what the client is expecting or wanting or needing.
I liked how you said it. Or if I could have you repeat that again, I think I'm getting it now and how you're breaking it down. So it's like basically a 3-part model for the total price. The goods and services fee is that hourly rate times the projected hours baked in an extra 20%. That's your hourly rate. That's your goods and services fee. Get it. Then part two you mentioned is something here. And then that's the experience that is, say that all again. I'm like writing the notes down, but like I want people to hear the three parts again one more time because I thought that was beautiful.
So I'm actually going to reframe it a little bit. So if we roll back the tape a little bit, when a couple of months ago, I put up a piece on my Instagram that was, what are you charging for when you serve what you're serving? Are you charging for the ingredients? Are you charging for the slice of pie, or are you charging for the full belly? So your ingredients are the inputs, the things, the goods and services fees, the stuff that you're doing. And so like if you were to go to your favorite brunch place, you aren't going to sit there and ask the chef, okay, well, how much was the eggs? How much was the bacon? How much was all of the inputs? Then if you look at what you're serving up, the slice of pie, that's the knowledge, the expertise, as well as the other extra bits and pieces, like the plate that it's served on, the hosting, the printing, the stuff that is, they may not have considered that they need to be able to digest what you're serving up. But then when it comes to the value, you're talking about that full belly feeling. So we talk a lot about, there's lots of different designers that can do lots of different things, but there is definitely a worth and a value when it comes to the person, how easy they are to work with, how much they can see the other things coming down the road, or create and ideate with the client and say, oh, well, I was thinking this could be really valuable to your business. This could be something extra, as well as being aware and understanding if the client's making lots of money, you're allowed to make money too.
Say if it's like a mom and pop versus like a bigger brand, clearly the value for the bigger brand is even more. You can't charge both equally.
And if you did charge both equally, you would either shortchange yourself with the larger client, or you would put that mom and pop out of business. And if they're not a business, they can't pay you. Mm-hmm. If they're like, a lot of the time when we're trying to do these large branding situations or these large projects, and we're trying to expect someone who isn't a large corporation, they're a small down the road mom and pop, you're not able to charge those high rates because it doesn't match what you're serving to them. The value is not matched, but it also has the potential to be so expensive that they're not able to run their business. And if they're not able to run their business, you're not going to be able to get future work from them, because it's all about creating relationships with clients so that they come to you when they need you and you're ready.
100%. I hope whoever's listening is having some breakthroughs right now. Like this is everything I needed when I started, and everybody has their kind of own variations in models. If you're heavy on illustration, here's a great model. If you're heavy on like the branding or the layout related assets, print or digital, there's a great layout here too. And I really, really like this. But from there, what do you feel are the next steps, or what are the next steps? If you're that beginner, this is more beginner and intermediate from your level, where would you take this next?
Well, the next steps are recognizing when you're probably taking on too much or you're too cheap. So if you're getting if you're forgetting what it feels like to be told, no, you're too expensive, you're too cheap, straight away. Like that's it. If you're getting all yeses, if everyone is saying yes, 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 you are too cheap. So it is immediately time to start dreaming bigger.
I got to say real quick, I learned something in a marketing workshop. I love that you're saying this. And I learned something in a marketing workshop with Lewis House at his conference. And they were basically saying, like, if you have some type of product or service, and over 50% of people are saying yes right away and not batting an eye, you need to raise your rates. And it was like, yes, absolutely. Okay. If most people are picking the full price option versus your monthly option, it's time to raise your rates. So I'm really, really glad you said that. I was like, okay, that was a beautiful thing to segue, because that can be applied to whatever type of service model or product that someone's pushing.
Most definitely. And if your pricing isn't responding to market demand, then it's going to become stagnant. It's not going to progress. You're not going to be in your 50s still charging the same amount of money for what you're doing now. There was actually a story I shared with some of my followers a little while ago, and I'll share it here. So there used to be a burger joint that was around the corner from us, and you would get all of your normal burgers and fries, and it was an awesome place. And then on the menu, they had this thing called a carrot ceremony. And you'd sit there and go, what is a carrot ceremony? And it was $2. Cool, not a problem. Sure, here's $2. I want to find out what a carrot ceremony is. And it was literally the owner of the burger shop coming to your table and peeling a carrot in front of you. That's all it was. Like, that is it. And so every time that someone ordered it, he upped the price, and then he upped it again. And they upped it again. And it became this thing where people were like, oh, let's go to the burger joint. And they'd be like, hey, get the carrot ceremony. And like, people are still buying it when it's more expensive than the burger. Like, it's just going and going and going. And people are responding to it because it's fun. It's interesting. They're not necessarily paying for, you could get like a bag of carrots for $1. And these people are paying like $18, $19
to watch
by the time
peel a carrot.
Yeah, to watch this dude peel a carrot. He even had someone order it takeaway. And so he went into their house in their land room and starts peeling this carrot.
You got to up the goods and services fee on that one.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the ROI on that is amazing. And so by the time that they closed up, so he actually went, of all things, on to run for local council. But he finished up his burger shop. And at the time of closing, it was $32 for a carrot ceremony.
Wow. And
so he was responding to market demand. He was creating an entertainment value or adding an extra value because it created buzz. It made people laugh and think and brought people together with an entertainment purpose by just peeling a carrot. And so by increasing that rate, he was able to just keep that sustaining, keep that being something that was entertaining and responding to market rate. So if you can then apply that to your business of like, if people are always getting the same things, or you're finding yourself that you are working every single hour in the day and still not making ends meet, or feeling like your bank account is reflecting the absolute blood, sweat, and tears that you're putting into your business, it's time to raise your rate. It's time to up the price when everyone wants a slice.
When did you find you last needed to up your rates? As of recently this year, especially due to inflation? Like, when you have these conversations, like I helped a student craft a message of like increasing his rates with, his demand increasing, as well as inflation. Here just got labeled as 6.2%, but it's way more than that. I'm sure it's way worse in Australia too. Crazy stuff's going on there. Do you take that into account when you're like relaying this to people, like the economic standpoint of things, of why demand has increased? Economy, I'm like, groceries have gone up like crazy. Gas has gone up like crazy. And like, these are all things to consider too.
Yeah. And those are living expenses. Those are things that you take into account when you are calculating what salary you need to be able to survive. And realistically, when you are employed by an employer, you get a raise each year. So if you aren't giving yourself a raise each year, at the very least, if you have not given yourself a raise in the last year, please right now give yourself a raise. And it doesn't have to be massive. Like, I'm talking $10. If you raise your rate by $10, okay, say for instance, you are on $45 an hour and you're working 30 hours a week in your business, you're probably around about the $45 an hour per 30-hour week per, I think it was like 50 or 52 weeks a year, probably less because you wanted to give yourself some holidays. If you raise your rate by just $10 an hour, you have gone from 65 or 60-ish to $80,000. That extra $20,000, $15,000 to $20,000 is really, really like potentially life-changing just from $10. It doesn't have to be like, well, that's it, I'm raising all of my rates immediately. And also, one of the fears that a lot of people have when it comes to raising your rate, you're scared that your current clients are going to leave you because of it. Well, they're in business too, and they understand that if their costs go up, they're probably going to have to raise their rates as well. That's just business responding. And they also understand that you're actually more valuable to them now than you were when you started, because you have brand understanding, you've been through the trenches with them, and it's going to be more costly for them to find someone else that does what
and
you
know the
do.
language that they use and their audience uses. There's so many different things, like you grow value. So as we kind of like wind things down and land the plane, in your opinion, what would be a great starting privately hourly rate for people? Because I know some students are like, I charge $25 an hour. I make 18 at the day job, so 25. I'm like, too low. We're going up to 50. We're going up to 40, 45 or something like that ASAP. In your opinion, where would be a great starting point for someone, say they're just getting started, versus, and then someone who's like a year or two into the game, then 5 years, what would that progression and scale look like? Knowing that they're investing in their craft, the demand is slowly continue to grow, general trajectory going upward. How would that look in a perfect world for someone?
In a perfect world, and I'm very well aware that being in Australia and Australia, America, UK, they're all slightly different. And they're all, even when we look at, I've had some students that are like, well, design isn't valued where I am. Okay, well, work out what the number is for your particular situation. So say, for instance, and I'm just going to be spitballing here, if I was hiring someone, I would not be feeling comfortable paying less than $50 an hour to a junior that knows their shit, like someone who knows what they're doing. Once you get a couple of years under your belt, you would have progressed slightly from that 50 at least. But 2-3 years, you should probably be looking at, over that time, almost doubling your rate. So say for
75
instance,
to 100 minimum.
Yeah. And then once you get over that 100 hump, which is, it's a milestone. Please celebrate it. Please be like celebrating that milestone that you
some kind of pie, whether it's blueberry or pizza.
Yeah. I've never had a pizza pie, and I feel like it's like the perfect amalgamation of our two brands. Like it's just
to me, a pizza pie is just a pizza, I guess. Like it's called a pie.
It's the deep. We don't.
Oh, you mean like pie. Chicago style?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. To me,
a pie is something with filling in it.
Okay. A calzone.
Calzone. Now we're getting in the
too many carbs
zone
for
now.
me. I'm on a low carb day, non-training day. It's a high fat day, and I get no pizza today. So, okay, no, this is good.
Today is deadlifts day, so it's going to be an interesting day this afternoon.
Deadlifts and pie. That goes fuels your workout. Okay, so now we're at like that intermediate level, 100, charging a crispy Washington. If you're in the United States, a crispy Washington greenback over here, or no, it'd be a Benji Franklin over here. So yeah. Okay. So
yellow, green. No, green. Ours is green as well. There you go.
So, okay. Then the next level, and then we'll kind of wrap things up.
Yeah. So next level would be, you can see the value that you're delivering on larger base projects. Like you're sitting there going, this is something that's like a $10,000 project. Your hourly rate could change completely depending on the client. But if you're having a minimum of $150 an hour and going, well, look, this is what I'm charging. And if I was charging any less, I'd kind of feel like I was being shortchanged. So I need to be upping my rate. But within that, you need to be serving and delivering value that is reflective of that rate. So you can't just be going, I'm going to be charging $200 an hour, but still be delivering what a $50 an hour designer does. You need to be matching that rate and providing that value and baking that value in so that you can have those return clients, customers, and fans that share you like their little secret with people who are going to know your worth and understand it as much as what that original client did.
And I think over time, people will understand the unique value that they bring outside of just their work. Like maybe you have a unique way like Made by James of showcasing your logos that clients love, and you get like marketed to their platform. That's just like a bonus. I get to like feature my client here, little extra awareness for them. Like something like that. Or maybe you make time-lapse videos with the projects you do or whatever. There's some kind of creative solution you could use to bring that little extra level of value, but you'll find it over time when you stick with it.
Mm-hmm. It's all about finding that little extra flavor packet that you can add in that is just like, that's me. That's what I do.
Okay. Where can people go to find you online, support you, and soak up your resources?
So to find courses, resources, and extra source packets, head to easyasPiePricing.com, where there is plenty to feast on. And you can also find me on the Instagrams, JH Designs, or search either Easy as Pie Pricing or Pricing Queen. I'll pop up and I'll be ready to serve you all of these tips, tricks, and everything that I can kind of serve to you. I also want to let you guys know, those on the podcast who are listening, who have been massive fans like myself since day one. Yes, I have listened to episode 1 all the way through.
Rough,
yeah,
rough.
buddy. Nah,
come
because
a long
it shows
way
you
over
growth.
here. We've come a long way.
That's what we do. So if you head to easyasPiePricing.com/Scotty, SCOTTY. If you don't know, you now know.
No IE. It's a Y over here.
No. So if you head to easyasPiePricing.com/Scotty, you can access my free pricing calculator that takes all of the calculations that we talked about on this episode and makes it so that all you have to do is do the little sliders and put in exactly, like, start with your salary, bake in your expenses, portion it out so that you've got it for your hours, and it's going to serve you up your hourly rate on a silver platter so that you know your personal hourly rate, and then you can absolutely take off and just bake anything that you want and be able to serve and price yourself so that you're actually making dough for what you do.
This was good. I really, really, really appreciate you. And I'm really, really proud to see like the radical transformation you've made this year and truly owning your brand and just melting faces with absurd value, doing what you love, being the pricing queen and owning the pie persona.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty dope. You're doing a great job. And I hope people found a lot of value in this. I know they did. So have an incredible rest of your day. And yeah, I can't wait to see what kind of moves that you're shaking and baking moving forward.
Oh, look, it's going to be bacon amazing.
All right, Jazzy. Later. Have a great day. Peace.
Gotcha.
Thanks again for listening. It'd be awesome if you took the time to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and let the comment below so we can connect. Again, if you want to catch a shout out as a future listener of the week, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes and give it a rating and review.